Can you all hear me? I know you can't see my face. Um, I will be ready in one moment. I just want to share this link on Twitter. And they changed. Oh, here we go. They changed this thing on uh, YouTube. So let me just come on here and hmm, I'm just coming on here. I know I didn't put up the screen yet. Here, let me. Okay, now y'all can see me. I am just sharing this link on Twitter uh, for the peeps. So give me a minute. I'm live now. Tune in and graphic. There we go. All right. Ugh. I have just like a little bit of a different setup because I don't have my laptop in front of me so that I can have this little thing here so you can see the cards. I've got my little camera on my tripod. Let me turn off my ringer here. I am so excited. A couple weeks ago, I did this live tarot broadcast from New Orleans. That's where I was at the time. And it was impromptu, but you guys responded so amazingly to it that I figured I'd do it again and see what kind of juju we could pull down from the ether today with my lovely golden thread tarot. I'm gonna cut off my head here. There we go. All right. Let me see if I could pull up this window so I can watch the chat. All right. I don't even know where to put this. I guess I'll put this here. Let me make sure this isn't disconnecting me. Hold on. It did not. Let's see. It's looking like it might be acting a little bit funny. It's not. Okay. All right. So this morning on a very brief Instagram live, I shared some information that I will share here. You all know me. I know some of y'all other astrologers can be, I'm not even gonna say that. You all know me. I take the long shot. The way that I understand astrology is the way that I understand life, and that we have this present moment, but it did not arise from out of the blue. It did not come from, nowhere. And so I want to always find the ways in which this present moment connects to our past and how it is laying the pathway, paving the road to our future. So that means that when we have a new moon, I'm curious, has this part of the zodiac been triggered recently in any significant way? Um, will this particular degree or part of the zodiac, ooh, those just got dirty, that part of the zodiac be triggered significantly in the future? Ooh, Lord. Um, and so I have to go pull up my trusty ephemeris, and my calendar and look and see, okay, what's 21 degrees Pisces? Is this significant for us, or is this more background chatter? And I have discovered that this is significant for us. This new moon in Pisces is not, this is not background chatter. This is foreground chatter. This is a serious paving of some important future stuff. So let's go back first. We want to go back because in uh, December, December 23rd, as a matter of fact, Mars entered Pisces. Now, if you've been following me on Twitter for a while, since I started my account, you'll know that I pay very close attention to which planet is ahead of all of the other planets in the zodiacal order. And so this year, Mars has been ahead of all of the planets in the zodiacal order, which means that we've experienced disruption. We've experienced conflict. We've experienced things happening suddenly. We've experienced severances or changes as a precursor to conversations, as a precursor to reconciliation, as a precursor to the time that we focus on that. So all of those other little things I mentioned represent planets. You know, conversation is Mercury, reconciliation or negotiation is Venus, and focus is the sun. So Mars laid the groundwork by disrupting our norm in some way in our Pisces house. Now, Mars entered Pisces on December 23rd of 2018, but that 21 degrees Pisces, when was that? When was Mars at 21 degrees Pisces? Well, that would have been on January 24th, 2019. And if I'm not mistaken, I am not mistaken, Mars was trine Jupiter at that moment. Let me go back in my calendar. I missed that. See, I'm just discovering this in this moment because I'm trying to give you all the information. So let's see. Do I have my iPad? I don't know where it is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Mars in Pisces trine Jupiter in Scorpio the 24th or around that date of January. It was around that eclipse in Cancer. So why is 21 degrees Pisces important? Well, just mark that date. Let's see when else 21 degrees Pisces was triggered. So just think about that week. You know, think about that week of January 20th through the 26th or so when Mars was transiting over that degree or leading up to that. Let's see the next planet that actually no other planet has crossed that degree because Mercury went retrograde and Venus hasn't gotten there yet. So the sun is the next planet to reach that 21 degrees of Pisces. So why is this important? Why am I harping on this? I'm harping on this because in 2020 we have our next Mars retrograde. Mars retrogrades every other year. It's consistent, right? It's not out of the blue. It's not random. We can anticipate. So I personally get very interested in what sign, right? What degree. I have not checked and seen the last time we had a Mars retrograde in Pisces and Aries, but what I do know is that in November of 2020, Mars is going to station direct at 21 degrees Pisces. Now, that's really interesting because in America, in November of 2020 is the elections. And if you'll remember, in 2016, when we had our last election, it was Virgo, right? We had Jupiter in Virgo, those opposing signs. So all of that to say, watch this degree. Let's see, when will Venus and or Mercury cross 21 degrees Pisces? Let's see here. Who's going to make it first? Who's going to make it first? It looks like Mercury is going to make it first. April 27th, 28th. Mercury will cross 21 degrees Pisces. Venus will cross 21 degrees Pisces May 3rd. All right, so those dates, write them down. January 24th-ish of 2019, this week at the new moon, which is on April 5th. What was the other dates I just gave you? Shoot, forgot that quick. April 27th, 28th, and May 3rd, right? So these are just points that you can connect a particular story in your Pisces house. With that being said, I've got my Golden Thread Tarot here. I love this deck. Some people have asked me what this deck is. It's Golden Thread. They do have an app, which I do not use. I use Galaxy Tarot app, which I don't believe is on Apple operating system. It's only on Android. Sorry. My bad, not my bad. Anyways, today I'm going to do this reading, and then if you all have any questions at the end, for those who are able to hang around, I will take a few moments. And by question, I do not mean I'm going to pull tarot cards for you. I just mean maybe a question about Pisces, maybe a question about the eclipse guide or the sidereal astrology guide, maybe a question about astrology in general. I'm not going to pull cards for you. You can book a reading for that. All right. So I'm going to do this same reading. We did a full moon in Virgo reading last time, and we were talking a lot about how the moon in Virgo is very logical, and it's looking for external evidence of some kind as a means to getting its needs met. And so, in some ways, the needs that moon in Virgo, or that full moon in Virgo made aware for us, was that a lot of times we don't listen to our bodies, right? We understand our needs in reference to who and what can meet them. And if someone cannot meet them, then it must not be a need. And what I made clear, and I'm going to repeat here, is that when we have a full moon, the story is not about the sign of the moon. The story is about where the sun is. The sun is telling us where we are focusing. So if you look in your 2019 sidereal astrology guide, every time the sun changes signs, it will say focusing on, right? So the sun in Pisces will say focusing on experiencing meaning beyond the personal and tangible, and then you insert the house signification. So I'm Sag rising, that's my fourth house, my home, literally my dwelling place, my father in specific, but my parents in general. So now we're having a new moon in Pisces after that full moon in Virgo. And so now we can kind of integrate that information. We can integrate and come to tell a new story about our Pisces house, about how we understand our bodies, right? Water is always about biology. Water is always about uh, biological ties, right? So we have our internal processes of hunger, right? Very primal. But Pisces is very much an outside in, inside out. That my body, my emotional self can be affected by things that don't originate in my body, right? Mirror neurons, implicit memory, all of these things. So I don't want to spend too much time on the astrology. Let me shuffle these cards, and I'm probably going to just pick up this camera. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I might have to lay it down upside down. Yeah, that's just what I'm going to have to do so that it can face the camera. And we're just shuffling a little bit more. These cards are big, so they're kind of hard to shuffle, and they're plastic actually with like this gold leafing on it. So they are a little bit hard to shuffle. These particular cards I shuffle sideways like this because they're too long. And sometimes I miss, and they're very, very, very slick. But I like them. I kind of want to get another deck just to like keep because I just love these. This is really the only kind of indie deck that I've actually made use of, which is really quite remarkable. I have several decks, and besides like my generic Rider-Waite Coleman Smith decks, Morgan Greer, and just a Universal Tarot, this is really the only deck that I've been like, oh, I could use this. I love these images. So as I always do, I'm going to cut the deck after I finish shuffling, and the card on the bottom is going to give us a major reference point for how we're going to interpret this reading and how we should really understand these cards. Almost like a significator for this new moon. And if you meditate or visualize or journal, this is a card that you can use as a point of reflection. And then we're going to lay down about 9 cards, 3 at a time, and see the story that is revealed to us in the cards. I do offer tarot readings, 1-hour tarot readings, and you can go to my website, The People's Oracle, to book that. I will be at Haji Healing Salon this first Sunday. What is that? April 8th, I believe. Can't remember. Offering tarot readings. So go to Haji, Haji, healingsalon.com, and you can book me there. In the meantime, let's cut this deck, y'all. I love tarot. All right, the card on the bottom. Oh, this card, I was just thinking about this card this morning. And I'm going to read you what I wrote because it is this card. This is the Lover's card. You see that? This is the Lover's card. Let me make sure y'all can actually see. This is the Lover's card. So, yeah, I'm just going to lay this card here. And I'm going to pick up my phone because I literally just texted in reference to myself. I literally just texted what this card meant. The Lovers. The anxiety is the discomfort of knowing that things cannot stay the way that they are, no matter how great the risk of embracing something else is. I'm going to say that again. The Lovers card says, it highlights for us the anxiety, which is the discomfort of knowing things cannot stay the way that they are, no matter how great the risk of embracing something new. The Lover's card is not about love. Very, very, very rarely is it about love. And even if it is about love, the Lover's card is about, oh, you think you have a choice. Ah, that's where you got it mixed up, right? It's kind of like a burning building. You cannot go back inside, right? That's being really, really, really extreme. But that's the point. It's like things have already changed. And it's you now that needs to catch up. The message of this Lover's card is you are at a crossroad and you cannot go back. Anxiety makes you paralyzed at times, like you're just standing still because you don't know what it is that you're embracing. The Lover's card is a card of choice, is really about your internal disposition regarding how you're going to move ahead, right? Are you staying stuck? Right? Are you holding on to something that you know no longer works for you? You know it's broken beyond repair. You know that chapter is ended. You know that story is over. Yet and still, there's this discomfort of the knowledge that you can't go back and the risk is great. I often interpret the Lover's card as making a decision that requires a sacrifice. What do you have to give up in order to this? Right? You cannot have a closed fist expecting to receive something, right? You're holding on to something. And often we fear the vacuum of that empty hand. We fear that if we let go, that our hand will just remain empty. We fear if we let go of that relationship, that person, that we will never be loved again. We fear if we let go of this job, we will not ever get another job. We fear, right, that we cannot cope with the vacuum of an empty space. When you're letting go of belief systems, when you're letting go of stories, there is this discomfort of, but who am I? What is my story? When you're coming into awareness of narratives that have informed your life, and you realize that even though they may be factual, they aren't your truth, it's like, okay, wait, if I let go of this story, if I let go of this narrative, right? Who am I? What is the story? What is true? And it's being in that place of knowing you need to let go, but not really, knowing you need to let go, but feeling anxiety over the emptiness that comes when you let go, right? So let's lay down these cards here, and I'm gonna kind of tilt this camera down so that you can see. I might not even have enough room here. Let's put this really tight here. All right. Woo! I love it. I love it. I love it when the cards just start off with a bang. Last time, the first few cards were all pentacles. So let me see if y'all can see this. I'm going to have to bring this closer. Yeah. All right, we've got the Two of Cups, the Ace of Cups, and Strength. I want you to look at this card in relationship. Where is it to this one? Do you see the duality there? The space in the middle of both of those cards, something from the sky coming down. You have a serpent there, and then you have dual serpents in the Two of Cups, right? Duality. Look at that. Very, very interesting. I love these cards. And then look at the Two of Cups and the Ace of Cups. You have an eagle, you have a lion here, and you have an eagle here, and there's that lion again, right there in the strength. Look at that. I love these cards because they challenge me visually. All right, so we have some common imagery here. Two lions, right, an eagle. So we're going to talk about those things. We're going to talk about what that means. Oh man, I'm gonna have to turn these cards around though so I can look at it myself and see the visuals. Mm. Intuitively, just looking at these cards, the visual of something from above intersecting with something here, right? There's something about that where these two things intersect. Um, I'm gonna have to think about that more, but let me just get into these cards. We have got the Two of Cups, the Ace of Cups, and Strength. What are cups? What is cups? What do cups hold? Water. And what did I just say water is? Water is biology. Biology is tricky. Um, it's very easy to think about the body like a machine. We keep coming back to this thing, but it's really, really an important theme, right? Especially when we're coming off the heels of that full moon in Virgo and now we're in Pisces. It's it's very easy to think of the body as a machine, right? You get your anatomy books and you dissect the body and you name its parts and you say, well, this does this and this does that, right? If your heart is broken, you just take out the old heart, put in a new heart, right? Your kidney is broken, you take out the old kidney. You may not need another kidney, you just keep one kidney. I don't know, right? We treat the machine like a body, but cups really speak to us about not the static anatomical nature of the body, but the dynamic biological, physiological processes of the body. And that your body and your brain, and even how you experience your body, is shaped by experience. Reading this book, and they talk about it was an article about the genetic possibilities of an embryo or a fetus, and how the possibilities that are actualized are in response to even the environment of the womb, to the environment around the mother that is affecting the mother's body. So when we talk about cups, we're talking about these things. We're talking about the body in that way. The Two of Cups is the card of reconciliation and negotiation. Understanding that duality often means separate wills, right? That two people have two different sets of desires, two different wills, two different ways of interpreting things, two different sets of feelings, two different experiences that have brought them to this present point. And the Two of Cups speaks to us about reconciliation and negotiation, understanding that moving forward does not happen without reconciliation and negotiation. So we do have a theme emerging of duality in this sense, of these two paths. For example, we can say something from the past in your present experiences, and how easy it is to just throw away the baby with the bathwater. How easy it is to say, just let it burn. I don't need that. I don't want that anymore. But the issue is that you have already been affected and shaped by that thing in the past. And so you can distance yourself from it. You could throw it away. You can deny it. You can cut them off. You can block their number. You could cuss them out and block them on Twitter, right? Follow, unfollow, block, unblock, whatever it may be. But the fact of the matter is that who you are at this present moment has already been shaped by the presence of that person, place, or thing in your life. And so, how are you going to reconcile and negotiate with it, right? We've got the Ace of Cups here. And did that card come up in I think that card came up in the full moon reading. That card came up in reference to uh, the body speaking, not in reference to something external, right? So if one strategy for getting our needs met is to discern from our environment which needs are responded to, right? And then saying, that's a real need. If this responded to, then it must be a real need. And if it's not responded to, it must not be a real need. And so, oh man, this is reminding me of these tweets I did around Jupiter and Scorpio about silencing your body, because when it spoke, it was not listened to. And sometimes it was responded to in abusive or violent or whatever ways. And so we cut off those needs. And so the Ace of Cups reminds us to return inward, to close your eyes, and to return to that interoceptive place of being able to discern internally what your body is saying, the sensations in your body, and letting those speak and determine what your needs are rather than someone else's lack or incapacity of meeting your needs, right? Really being able to say, I'm going to give this person a choice. I'm not going to deny myself this thing because I've decided that maybe I don't really need it, or maybe this person is incapable of meeting it, right? So the Ace of Cups says that the source of your needs is internal, right? So we have this narrative of making a choice, of reconciling and negotiating, of duality, of past versus present, of what has always been versus your present reality. Finally, we have strength here. And the strength is the card of restraint, of your primal nature, of, again, this idea of reconciling it and not control, but managing it. Understanding that your primal nature will run you or you will run it. And sometimes we go back and forth, right? The primal feelings of fear, of anger, right? That result from our entitlement to have and do and be. The lion that is showing up in this reading twice here, the lion is a beast. It's a beast of the jungle, right? And we talk about beast, it's reminding us that we are animals. And a lot of times our intellect makes us forget that we are animals, right? I'm gonna keep pulling so that we can pull together this narrative. I'm really kind of excited about these cards because cups really do give us permission to honor our bodies in a way that capitalism and patriarchy often says no, right? That our bodies exist within this system, right? Even in our family systems, our bodies exist within these systems. All right. That card has been haunting me. The Hierophant, the Hermit, and the King of Swords. Let me pull this down so you can see here. Can you see it? This is hard. The Hierophant, the Hermit, and the King of Swords. It's the reading so far. All right, let me turn these cards back around so I can see them. Just playing little musical chairs with the cards. I need the visual here so I can keep looking down and let them speak to me. All right. The Hierophant and the Hermit are both cards of seeking answers. Man, again, this dual theme of inside versus outside. The Hierophant and the Hermit are pairs in the sense that the Hierophant speaks to the institutions that we have established to represent the consensus on some issue, whether it is the institutions of power that represent how we consolidate our power, the institutions of knowledge that represent how we consolidate and reconcile our knowledge, the institutions of spirituality that represent how we consolidate and recognize our spiritual myths and stories. And they can represent the people who are figureheads in these institutions. But the Hermit is about inside. It is about not seeking answers prescribed by institutions, but kind of following your own conscience, using the power of your own perception to seek answers. Oftentimes, the Hermit will come up in a reading to say, everybody's typing, I'm looking at it. The Hermit is a card that comes up often to say that Not quite, right? That you're seeking something, you're seeking fulfillment. It's almost like you don't even know what you're looking for, but when you find it, you'll recognize it. And so there's a dissatisfaction with what is in front of you, but not really knowing what it is that you're actually looking for. Oftentimes, I'll see the hermit in readings with clients, and they're wondering if this job is the job. And they're asking me that because there is the internal hesitance, knowing that their primal need for security wants this to be the thing, but their internal need for fulfillment and the indescribable feeling of knowing that this is it, it's telling them this is not it, this is not it. um, so then we have the King of Swords. Somebody said on here those are very leader type cards, men in charge. They don't necessarily have to be men. It's just that the tarot is the tarot, and if I had another deck, I'm sure they would be women. But for me, it is highlighting the duality of the inside versus the outside. The way that the outside affects the inside and the way that the inside affects the outside. Sometimes my brain just starts talking so loud, and I just say that that's spirit talking to me. Um, what it's saying is this idea of free will. Um, uh, the idea of free will says that you are free to choose. But what these cards are speaking to us is that your will cannot be free when you do not acknowledge the systems that have shaped the choices available to you, the experiences that have shaped your own motivation for choosing. You cannot have a free will with so much unconscious. I'm going to say that again. You cannot have a free will with so much unconscious. You think you're making a choice. You think you're making a choice. Who gave these options to you? Who said that this is what you had to choose from? Right? Who are the people that shaped your sense of self? Whose gaze is in your mind as a reference point for the decisions that you're going to make in your life? And when I say gaze, this is this thing that we are social beings, and that even if there is no, I mentioned this before on Twitter, some people even have a hard time writing their feelings down in a journal, not because somebody's going to read it, but they're ashamed of the feelings because of the gaze that is in their mind, right? The idea of being judged, or the past experience of being judged for feeling a certain way. Shame is this social tool for bringing a certain kind of behavior. So when I see the Hierophant and I see the Hermit and I see the Ace of Cups and the Two of Cups, I'm feeling this tension. I'm feeling this duality around who is determining this thing in your life, the choices that you have before you, your disposition towards your own body, your own needs, right? The primal experience of being a mammal and making these decisions, trying to quiet the animal voice. We've got the King of Swords here, and kings consume and dissect. They make decisions based on the information available to them. The King of Swords is very rational, right? This guy is sitting here with this sword. Make sure y'all can see that. He's sitting here with this sword. That world globe in his hand harkens back to the Two of Wands. The Two of Wands has that same globe in his hand. It's about dominion. But he has a sword, so there's this sense of dominion, having the authority to make decisions. And I feel like this poor hermit in the middle is stuck between other people's expectations of him, stuck between society's expectations, their family culture, their parents, all of these people who represent institutions in their lives, and the King of Swords who just wants to be rational. And the hermit in some way understands that neither one of these are good enough for making decisions about what you need. That other people, your parents, look at this Hierophant, right? I almost want to say that's your parents in that card. And your parents care what other people think so much. Your parents have the pressure of cultural expectations on them. And then the King of Swords is like, well, just do what's most rational. And the Hierophant in the middle understands that at this present moment, when you're faced with a lover situation, the lover situation is not about asking someone else for advice. The lover situation is not about seeking validation from people or places. Lovers' choices, which is the card that was on the bottom, lovers' choices are about understanding that neither one of those are good enough, meaning the way things have always been, the expectations and narratives that determine your choices from this point and up to this point in your life, the people who have shaped the ideas of yourself and what you quote should want or what you should do, right? And the King of Swords, again, this idea that it's almost like these two poles of, okay, do I look to the way that things have always been done, established norms, as a Jungian analyst would call it, my parental complexes, or do I make a rational decision based on the evidence? We're talking about the Ace of Cups here, so neither one of those are going to do, okay? Spirit just told me to say not to outsource decisions about your needs. And for some reason, it's coming up in my brain about like someone who may be trans and they have not, quote, come out, or someone who may be queer in some way and has not come out. And they're stuck between these two cards, the Hierophant and the King of Swords. And neither one of those will do, because we're really talking about cups, which is your body and your biology, right? Strength. This very primal thing that is socialized to be interpreted a certain way, but when your real life experience does not line up with the choices available to you, for example, if you are experiencing yourself as non-binary, the duality of male and female doesn't cut it for you, right? All right, last three cards here. Oh, Five of Swords, love that card. Four of Swords, and the Seven of Swords. This really just took a turn. What's missing here? We're missing Wands and Pentacles. Swords are about conflict, internal conflicts of ideas. Whose reading is this? This is a general reading. If it don't apply, it don't apply. If it does apply, I'm so glad. We've got the Five of Swords, the Four of Swords, and the Seven of Swords. Yeah, I'm going to have to pull this around this way because I've got the cards. So hold on. There we go. That was just so much easier than what I was doing before. And there's the rest of the cards. So we've got the Lovers that was on the bottom when we cut the deck. We've got the Two of Cups, the Ace of Cups, and Strength. The Hierophant, the Hermit, the King of Swords, the Five of Swords, the Four of Swords, and the Seven of Swords. So I want to show you guys just how my mind groups these cards together. My mind group starts at the Lovers here, and it goes to the Two of Cups, and then again there's the Hierophant with two people in it, right? Then we have the Ace of Cups, which is singular, the Hermit, which is singular, the King of Swords, which is singular, and all of these cards down here are very, very, very singular. So this idea of reconciling the dualities in life, this whole idea of feeling caught in between, feeling stuck, feeling fractured, all the bad swords here, oh man, listen, I would hate to live in y'all brains. I'm just saying, like, everything is not good and bad. And again, this is my reading, so I interpret the cards the way that I do. Five of Swords. Do you know what I tell my clients when the Five of Swords comes up in a reading? Stop thinking about what everyone else wants and what everyone else would do. The Five of Swords is your permission slip to be selfish, to be self-concerned, to listen to yourself, to go inside, to be concerned with your own feelings, to not consider the feelings of someone else. That's what the Five of Swords says. The Five of Swords says, you know, there's a real easy way to reconcile this conflict of who's going to determine what I'm going to do and who's going to determine what I need and blah, blah. It's a real easy way to reconcile that. The Five of Swords says, dead all that, boo. You see them coffins down there? Dead all that, boo. Dead it. Just dead it. D-E-A-D. D-E-D. Dead it. And I really like the visual of this with that singular sword. I almost feel like all of those swords on the sides are everyone else's ideas and opinions and neuroses and narratives that they come to you with. You know how you try to go get advice from somebody and then they start talking about themselves? And not that they're changing the subject to talk about, something different, but they use their own experiences as a reference point for what's possible for you. And so a lot of times when people start talking to me that way, I say to myself in my brain, oh, they're not talking to me. They're talking to themselves in my presence. And there's a difference here, right? The difference here is that when they're talking to me, right, they're listening to me and they're able to resonate with my own values I've established for myself. They're able to understand the standard I have established in my life, and they are able to bear witness and help to hold me to that standard. That's accountability. But the other way is that they are not able to bear witness, or they're refusing to bear witness in that moment. And they say to you their own story about how they've experienced this particular thing. For example, I've had somebody say to me, you know, you can't count on your friends. The only person you can count on is you. And I'm sitting there listening like, oh, they're not talking to me. They're talking to themselves out loud, right? They're telling their story about how their lives have been in this particular experience and how their experiences have shaped possibility for them. And in that moment, the choice is, do I embrace that story as my own, or do I take it for what it is, as their story being told to themselves in my presence, right? So this Five of Swords, do you see all of those swords and that one sword coming up from the middle? You don't have to consider everybody else's opinions. You don't have to consider their ideas either. I mean, I love the way that these cards go Two of Cups, Hierophant, and Five of Swords, right? We start off so eager to reconcile that Two of Cups, wanting to figure out how to hold these two disparate things together and mix them up. But if you notice in these cups, I mean, they never really become one, right? It's almost like these two things just exist in the same space at the same time. And to that, I would say not everything is reconcilable. And again, not everybody's opinion should be considered. So when we get to this Five of Swords, especially coming after King of Swords, this is why we have to read in order and together. The Five of Swords coming up after this King of Swords is really talking about how the decision-making power is in your hands. And the way you make that decision is by slicing through all of the ideas and opinions and judgment and narratives of other people that occupy your mind, clouding your ability to make decisions for yourself. When I talk about the unintentional why, I'm talking about all of those other narratives that are encoded in your body that you've had to adopt in order to survive, right? and that you adopt your parents' way of doing things, your religion's way of doing things, your culture's way of doing things in order to be validated and accepted. But the Five of Swords speaks to um, cutting through all of that. Next, we have the Four of Swords, right? And again, this is really, really interesting coming under the Hermit, right? These cards are very kind of um, analogous to each other. The first thing, honestly, that came up when I saw that card was listen to your dreams, write your dreams down. That's the first thing that kind of intuitively popped in my head. It is a card of rest. It is a card of withdrawal. Um, I almost want to say you don't need the opinions and validations of you do not require the opinions and validation of other people in order to reconcile what your needs are. Um, I mean, really, really figuring out what it is that you need. I have to show you this because I think that you will appreciate it. Hold on. All right, this is what I'm trying to show you, the visual that I'm getting here. Do you see that hermit right in the middle? The hermit is at the center of all of this. And remember what I said about the hermit. The hermit is seeking something, and they're seeking it on their own. They're not seeking it inside institutions, from systems or structures that seek to validate, right? The hermit is on a solitary journey. Something that I have said a lot recently, and that I said the other day when I did the 2019 eclipse guide working session, I started off by saying truth is not the facts of your story told in sequential order. Truth is not the facts of your stories told in sequential order. And what that means is that truth is your interpretations of the facts you have deemed relevant to your story. At any given moment, you can deem certain facts irrelevant to your story and then say, what's the narrative that emerges if I take this out? Decentralizing this particular person, decentralizing this particular experience. What institutions really do is they give you a framework and a reference point for how to understand your life and interpret your experiences. When I was deep into Christianity and the church, you take these particular truths at face value and you measure your life against them, right? When you encounter massive suffering in the world, you measure that suffering against the narrative, right? So the narrative can be, oh man, it's really unfortunate that they're going to go to hell because they have not accepted Jesus as their Savior. What's the scripture? All things work together for the good of those that love Jesus. They must not love Jesus, right? This is a way that we take a prescribed belief system, or we take something that an institution has given us, and then we use it as the metric for how we interpret our lives and the world around us. So that if we're taking the narrative of predestination and a kind of religious manifest destiny, right? And we say, oh, all this suffering in the world, it must be because they have not accepted Jesus as their Savior. I know what I'll do. I'll go convince them to accept Jesus as their Savior, and then their lives will be great. And that's kind of like, whoo, boo, okay. All right, right? So the Hierophant next to the Hermit is really asking us to pull back our lens and really even understand the narratives that have informed our lives. And do we want to use those narratives as reference points for the decisions that we need to make about what we need going forward? We've got the Seven of Swords here. And again, The way that this reading moves from the dual to the singular, trying to identify the disparate pieces to reconciling them into one, or recognizing that they're irreconcilable, and that you have to make a decision, right? Um, the Seven of Swords is very, very fascinating in this context because I often call this the logistics card of needing to solve a problem, of having the tools available to solve a particular problem. But given that this is showing up like right next to the Four of Swords here, these both singular cards of kind of the process or outcome that arises as a result of this Four of Swords, of this going inward, of this withdrawing, of solitude, of, again, remember I was just saying with that Ace of Cups about closing your eyes and not using the external as a reference point or as evidence of what your needs are, right? Your hunger is not determined by whether or not you have food. Your tiredness and sleepiness is not determined by whether or not you have a bed. You see where I'm going with this? You having to take a dump is not does not come from you having a toilet, right? These are all things that stand as is. So we can extend to your need for love and validation and acceptance is not determined by someone else's ability to give it to you. So these cards ask us, demand of us, that we accept that the past and how things have been, you got to dead that. We cannot. It's over. It's been over, right? The Lover's card to me is you've come to the point of no return. Ain't no going back, boo. You cannot go back. I want to read that thing I said earlier about the Lover's card. Um, the Lover's card, which was the card that's really the signification for this reading and that we always go back to as we interpret these cards. The Lover's card highlights the anxiety, which is the discomfort of knowing that things cannot stay the way that they are, no matter how great the risk of embracing something else is. Do you have that sword in the middle there? Do you have that? Right? I know you got all these other little swords, which are other people's stories, other people's beliefs, other people's possibilities about what your life should be like, other people's opinions about what you should do for you. Do you have this sword in the middle, though? Do you have that? Do you have your truth? And remember, truth is not the facts of your story told in sequential order. Truth is subjective. Truth is your ability to subjectively verify something. I come over here and I say that chair is purple, and you come sit next to me, that chair is purple. It's true, right? Now we can measure, the quantities of red and blue in that chair and say, is this purple, or is this really blue, or is this really red? But when you come and say, that's perfect, that's purple, now it's true, you subjectively verified that. And so it's important to understand that your truth is what you can subjectively verify about your life, and you don't need somebody or somebody else to come in and verify that for you. That's why we have all of these swords, because we're reconciling the conflicts inside of us. We're becoming aware of the conflicts, and we're ready to reconcile them. This Seven of Swords, they call it the lone wolf card. They call it the lone wolf card, right? The card of going out on your own, of doing something out on your own, but also recognizing that you don't need your ideas and opinions validated. You do and you don't, right? You cannot have your ideas and opinions validated if you're not willing to tell your truth. You cannot find community if you're not willing to live in your truth. You cannot find the people who will lift you up and reflect back to you that sense of self that feels like the real you if you're not willing to be the real you. You must be the real you to find the community that can support that. So again, I talked about in the beginning of this reading this idea of your holding on to something, that lover's card, holding on to something and being afraid of letting go because you don't know how long it's going to be empty, right? So holding on to a sense of self that's not the real you, holding on to beliefs and ideas and opinions that don't arise from your truth, from your subjective verification, right? Verification is to make true, right? To say, aha, that's true, right? Your ability to subjectively perceive something, right? How much have you taken someone else's narrative or story as your truth? Knowing good and well you too grown for that. That's called dogma. Dogma is when someone else hands you a book and says, this is a really good book, and you read it and you say, this is a really good book, rather than saying, is it really a good book? I mean, we do this all the time. We have these conversations about new music that comes out, and this is a very superficial way of understanding it. But we have these conversations about new music coming out, and we're sitting around waiting for other people to have their opinions so we can say, yeah, it was good, wasn't it? Can you subjectively verify for yourself? Again, this is not about rebellion. This is not about I I I don't need them. I don't need them. I don't need them to validate me, right? I ain't doing this for them. This is not that kind of thing. This is understanding that the end goal is validation. The end goal is acceptance. The end goal is love. The end goal is getting your needs met. But the way that you get there, the way that you get to validation, the way that you get to love, the way that you get to acceptance, right? These swords, you got to deal with the conflicts inside of you. You can't keep pushing them down. You can't keep suppressing them. They're real, and they're trying to get you to you. They're trying to get you to a place where you can authentically discern your own needs so that you can get them met. They're trying to get you to be who you really are so you can find the community that will validate you. They're trying to give you the power, the authority, right? To even let somebody else choose. If you're in a relationship and you're refusing to say, that hurt me, I don't like that. That hurt me when you said that. That hurt me when you did that. Right? You are entitled to not be hurt. But you can't live in that entitlement until you say, you hurt me. Or you acknowledge to yourself that you've been bending and contorting yourself to exist in this space because you didn't know what the consequences of saying you hurt me are. Right? So what are the consequences of saying you hurt me? You don't even have to say it out loud. Say it to yourself and see how that changes your disposition towards your environment and the people in it. I really love these cards. I'm going to pull 3 more cards as just like an actionable item for us. You know, what are the what are things that we can do, right? I've laid out a lot here. I love these cards. We've got the Ace of Swords, the 5 of Cups, and the Magician. So that 5 of Cups is back. That disappointment, that sadness that things have not worked out the way that they have. The Ace of Swords tells us to tell the truth. This is what I've just been talking about. Tell the truth. Truth does not need validation. It's nice, and eventually you'll get it, but you have to be willing to go there by yourself first. That's what that 7 of Swords is. You have to be willing to be the first one out the gate. Remember, I was talking about how the planets, I've been paying attention to how the planets move through the zodiac and which planet gets to a sign first, and how Mars has been first, right? And so that tells us that you have to go out alone and be willing to disrupt the status quo in your life, right? You have to be willing to disrupt the status quo in your life in order to get to that place of validation. You have to be willing to venture into that unknown territory by yourself and not turning around and looking and seeing, are they coming with me? Are they clapping for me? Are they telling me good job? Are they agreeing with me? Right? You have to be willing to go out there. I am talking to you, Heidi. I am. If it resonates, it's for you. Right? You cannot seek applause when getting your needs met. You cannot seek applause when you're establishing boundaries. You cannot seek applause when you're finding your authentic truth of yourself. You have to be willing to go out there alone. And it might be lonely, right? It's temporary though. Humans do not live in a vacuum. That's why social media is so fascinating to me. Social media is like, man, no matter how weird you think you are, there is a whole group of people that are like, I'm weird like that too, right? No matter how quirky you think you are, there are a bunch of quirks and quirkiers out there that are ready, but you cannot find them and they cannot find you if you are not willing to be that person. And sometimes that means doing it by yourself for a little while. Five of Cups and Magician. It's really interesting. I don't read reversals, but I do kind of use elemental dignities. And you've got cups in between the Magician and the Ace of Swords here, which to me kind of turns that cup on its head in a way. And I wouldn't say reverse, but I would say that there is a dynamic process happening here with these cards. The dynamic process is, one, telling the truth as a means to overcoming the disappointment gives you the tools that you need to move forward in life. The other piece is that living in your truth, standing in your truth, and recognizing your own capability to do that allows you to really see what's possible for you and to not harp on past stuff, to let it go. This reading was so cool. I think the overarching theme here, if I could succinct it up in 30 seconds, I'll try. The Lovers is telling us that you're at a crossroad and you recognize that really you've reached the point of no return. And no matter how comfortable you thought you were in a particular circumstance or a past situation, you really cannot go back. It's kind of like you've outgrown it, right? But it's your familiar and it's all you know. So the impulse is to just stay. But in reality, it's gone. I'm trying not to tell all of my business, but I just have to say it because I know this is going to resonate with someone else. It's like trying to go back into the womb. You're too big, right? It was only a small time that the womb was the right environment for you, and you've outgrown it. So it's just time to go, right? And you may not really be clear on where you're going or what it's going to be like when you get there, but it's over, right? The womb is closed. The sign, it's only an exit. It's not an entry point. There's a lot of duality in these cards and us trying to reconcile the narratives and voices that live inside of us that determine and shape us. And so this reading is talking about first recognizing what is you and what is not you, what is yours and what is not yours, what is your truth and what is someone else's truth, what are the facts and their interpretation and what are the facts and your interpretation, which is your truth. The Hermit is telling us, and let me not skip over the Strength card here. The Strength card is how we handle things. That whenever the Strength card comes up for me, I always say, you got this. You got this. You can handle this. You're handling it. You've got this, right? So this is not something that's impossible. You're doing it. So the idea that, oh my God, I can't do it. No, you're doing it. You've been doing it. The process of this whole Mercury retrograde, you've been doing it. You've been doing it. So rest in that courage and that confidence that where you stand now, you had to go over some stuff just to get here. Just to get here. So you're doing it. You're doing it. The Hierophant, the Hermit, and the King of Swords is asking us to recoil from the need for validations from people and institutions who do not share our truth. And that when we get to all of these swords, we really come to deal with the conflict. And the conflict is not necessarily with other people. The conflict is inside of you. The conflict is with who gets to have dominion over the territory of your mind, over the territory of your opinions, over the territory of your truth. Who gets to have dominion over that? You need that sword in the middle of this Five of Swords in order to cut through all of the narratives and voices in your brain, in your mind. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Everything that you have learned and experienced isn't bad, but you now have the discernment in this moment to really recognize what is true for you. Four of Swords admonishes us to listen to our dreams and pay attention to our dreams, write them down. And the Seven of Swords gives you the strength of mind, the clarity of mind to move forward into new territory by yourself, right? And you'll find who you're looking for when you get there. These Ace of Swords, Five of Cups, and Magician speak to us about the power of truth. The truth arms us with the power to overcome disappointment. I'm going to say that again. Well, I want to cry because I don't know who that's for. The truth empowers us to overcome disappointment. What's coming up is to say, when you put words to something that has been unconscious, that you have not understood, that you have not had the language to speak, when you put words to it, that's power. Now you are able to take it outside of you and examine its place in your life, its impact and role in your life. The truth empowers you to overcome disappointment. You have to be able to say what it is. You hurt me. I'm sad. This thing did happen. That's your truth. You don't need anybody to validate it. And that's the truth that's going to empower you to move forward in your life. We're at a crossroads. This is the first phase of mutable madness at this new moon. All these planets, well, not all of these, but Mercury is going to square Jupiter in Sagittarius, Mercury in Pisces next week. Venus the following week in Pisces is going to square Jupiter in Sagittarius. This is the meat of mutable madness phase 1, the squares between Pisces and Sagittarius. The sun is gearing up for a square to Saturn and Sagittarius, and then Mercury and Venus are going to square Saturn and Sagittarius. And we're really going to have to focus on these narratives and stories in order to I want to say, like, extract our truth from it. We need to extract our truth. This morning on Twitter, I talked about what has been encoded and how we need to decode it and recode it. Right? But we have to acknowledge what has been encoded in our bodies, in our memories, in our minds. This strength card is interesting to me because we really think that we are making decisions decisions free, right? We're using our own volitions, that we really have this freedom of will. But you're an animal. You're an animal. I'm an animal. We're mammals, right? What has been encoded in our DNA comes from generations of humans who have lived before us and have encoded in us the wisdom of how to proceed. That's not free will. But there's also a way our will is not free, in that there are unconscious things in our bodies that are shaping how we react and respond. And how often we're not reacting and responding to the person in front of us. We're not reacting and responding to the situation in front of us. I said this on Twitter this morning. Where is my iPad? I was talking about, do you know what being triggered means? Being triggered is when something or someone outside of you is like making a resonance with the story inside of you. That person or thing may not have even been there, but they're triggering, they are making vibrate inside of you something, right? And you find yourself responding to that something inside of you as it's shown to you in that person in front of you. That's not free will. You are not exercising free will when you are triggered. I get triggered all the time. This is not a judgment. Oh,
where's my phone?
I don't know. I don't have your phone. Can you close the door, please? Thank you.
I need my phone.
Um, close the door. I don't.
No.
I don't. Your phone is not in here. Um, where was I? Your will is not free when you're being triggered, and being triggered is not. Um, being triggered is not bad or wrong, but understand that if you're really trying to be autonomous, if you're really trying to make your life a living testimony of your intentions and convictions, you have to be willing to go into that territory with psychiatric help, with therapeutic help, right? You have to be willing to do that. Um, your will won't be free. You'll just keep reacting to old stuff that's not even in front of you anymore. So that's that on that. Do y'all have any questions? That's all I have for y'all. Y'all have any questions? I'm watching the chat screen here. I'm just watching the chat window here, seeing if you all have any questions. I think I'll take a picture of this reading and put it somewhere for y'all. Many thanks. You're welcome. The living tombs of the trail guys. You should write a book about it. You know, I have a gazillion books inside of me. I need some money to write them. Just wondered it, and you nailed my place in life. Unbelievable. Heidi, thank you so much. Thank you, Celeste. Thank you, Mara, Takeem. The moon cycle and the sun again. Yes. Um, the you cannot directly perceive the sun. That's where we start. This is just reality. There are people who go and stare at the sun, but you really cannot directly perceive the sun. And so the sun astrologically, as we're watching it transit, represents where we are focused for that 30-day period, where our perception and attention is focused. So the sun is in Pisces right now. Our perception and our intention is focused in Pisces. There are other things going on in our lives and in the world, right? Because there are other planets, but the sun tells us where our mind and perception is focused. We cannot directly perceive that. And so the moon cycle helps us to directly perceive that by offering contrast. Right? So we get a first quarter moon, a full moon, last quarter moon, and then a new moon. The full moon allows us to perceive something by objectifying it or in reference to something else. So we can know what Pisces is by understanding what Virgo isn't, right? If Virgo is calculating the process and the outcome, if Virgo is about the method and the function, if Virgo is about the syntax and logic, if Virgo is about the data and numbers, then we know Pisces is not. Pisces is not about the data and the numbers. It's not about calculating the process and the outcome. It's not about the evidence and the facts and the numbers and the data, right? So when we say Pisces is not that, we can understand what it is. Um, I'm gonna try to keep up with all of these questions. So when we get to a full moon, right, we're getting perspective on that. When we come to a new moon, right, we're starting a new story now, right? Because we can focus on this in a way where we, at least the way that the new and full moons are set up now, because we get a full moon before we get the new moon in the sun sign, we can integrate the revelations that come from a full moon into the new moon. So we start a new story here. Um, I have a question about your interpretation of the houses. Is it okay to switch topics? Okay, I'll come back to that because you asked it. How does the tarot correspond to the sidereal zodiac? I have no idea. I really don't use the Golden Dawn astrological associations with the tarot cards because they don't really fit for me. I don't use outer planets, so I don't really have any associations. It's just free association for me and intuition. Paige asks, my ascendant and Jupiter are both 21 degrees Scorpio. Is this significant for me? This was so good. Paige, didn't you book a reading with me? We gonna talk about it. Cursed. In your guide, you say the third house is siblings, aunts, and uncles. Fourth house is family in general, but the father in particular, that seems to be overlap. The fourth house should say parents in general, so I don't know if you're misreading that or if I made a typo, but the fourth house is parents in general, but the father in particular. And if you have family members other than your parents in your home, then your home is going to include kind of those people too. Um, yeah, this was great. Thank you all for coming along for me. This will be up for you to come back and watch. We'll do this again at the full moon in Libra in a couple of weeks. I believe it's the 19th of April, and that's going to be fun because we're going to be Aries sun, Libra moon at the time. You all have a great Monday, and I will see you later.